Welcome, everybody, to Brookside Story. I'm Quin Schultze.
And I'm Paul DeVries.
Pastor Paul DeVries is here. Paul, I keep thinking about COVID. I wonder if we could talk just for a few minutes about this. I know we're past COVID, although it's still around. We're past that point where people could not gather, would not gather, and people stayed home. And I worry, maybe wrongly so, that there are still a lot of people, Brookside and other churches, that are thinking, well, I got into the habit of worshiping at home, and that was okay, and it's not bad. At least I'm into it, and I can adjust my schedule, maybe even tune in the recording whenever I want, and maybe that's not the best. I'm not trying to be critical, but I'm just wondering if it's really important that we get together in person for worship. What's your sense of COVID and the aftermath?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was some good, right? So churches that were sort of lagging behind, like Brookside was as far as the technology of broadcasting services, I mean, we were forced to catch up. And I'm glad we have the technology for someone who is homesick, someone who can't make it to worship, that we have, and we're still not all that great at it. You know, we're much better in person than we are online, our sound and everything. But I think it has at least given us a tool. For example, my daughter lives in Costa Rica. She watches the services with her husband. Every Sunday, they sit down and watch us live. That was not available, at least not at Brookside before. So that's a good thing. But having said all that, I agree with you. I agree that there's a loss of a sense of what we can get when we're together in person, in community.
You had a metaphor you told me once about COVID, the flywheel thing.
Yeah.
Would you do that again?
I'm pretty sure I stole it from someone else, although
Okay.
I don't know, or I read it or heard it, but motors or engines, sometimes the expression is a flywheel. They have a wheel that makes the whole system go. And the hardest thing to do is to get that wheel going, which is why motors use most of their energy right when they start,
Yes.
right, to crank over. Once they're running, like a water pump, once that pump is running, the water shooting forward actually keeps it spinning. And it has, I think churches were like that. We were all spinning, our ministries, our programs, some of us more effectively than others, to be sure, and then we all instantly stopped. And I think, especially early on, we thought we'd just flip a switch and everyone would be back.
Post-COVID.
Post-COVID, once COVID would. But the truth is, the longer that motor set idle, the harder it is to get that flywheel turning. And it kind of turns and fits and starts. And I think this is, in a sense, where we are as a church. That flywheel is moving again. But some of the rhythms aren't quite there. We've lost some of the recognition of the advantage of those things, and it's taking a lot of energy to get back.
Yeah, that is a great metaphor. And let me add one thing from a communication standpoint. COVID was very difficult emotionally for all of us because it ripped us out of a lot of opportunities to get together with others. It isolated us. It brought people into consuming a lot more media at home. And it led to a lot of resentments and criticism, and there were disagreements about how to handle COVID, and it was a mess emotionally during that time. And I think that has carried over. So in addition to the difficulty of getting that flywheel going, we've got a lot of other emotional baggage. We need some more. I'm going to extend your metaphor. We need maybe a little more oil.
Yeah, I think that's true. If I just run with that metaphor, I like it. Oil keeps things from tearing or burning or frying, whatever, right? It greases the skids, as they say. And I think wherever there was a wrinkle, wherever there was a small tear, wherever there was a bumping point, that really got gummed up during COVID, and we're having a hard time getting the oil applied.
Yeah, in many ways.
Right?
Yeah, we all are. And so it's good to be in the house of the Lord together. It's good to be at Brookside together. It's good to be in your presence as you represent us as both priest and prophet.
Yeah.
but we're still putting oil in the system to
Yeah.
get it going and get that flywheel really running in a good way.
Let me just add one thing. I think the other thing that COVID did is there was a great turnover of people moving from here,
yeah.
there, and everywhere. And that too takes some time to sort out. Certainly at Brookside, a large turnover of people. We had a large turnover of staff. Not all of it COVID related, but it happened during that period, at least
Yes.
in our case. And that too adds to that. So it's a bit of a rebuilding season in some ways.
It is, yeah. And that reminds me, I want to say to you, Pastor Paul, it's been a more difficult period during COVID and post-COVID for you as a pastor than traditional. And for elders, you mentioned staff and so on. So for all of us, we're still in a sense recovering from COVID, and we need to do it together.
Yep, and with some grace, right?
There you
and
have
some
it.
understanding,
That's
absolutely.
good. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for talking about this, Pastor Paul.
Happy to do it. Good to be with you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, and be sure to join us for worship on Sundays, 10 a.m. at Brookside Christian Reformed Church. You can look us up online on Kalamazoo around, what is this out here, 32nd Street Southeast? Right?
36.
36.
Right where 36 runs into Kalamazoo.
Oh, that's right, where if you're not careful, you end up in the church parking lot.
Exactly. Or the lawn.
Or the lawn.
Or the building.
Okay, we'll see you, everybody.